Hello, pirates. Welcome to the Chapter 3 study guide. Today we're going to be talking about the products of evolution, university, and diversity. So number one should be a pretty straightforward and easy question. We've gone over this multiple times. What is true about characteristics seen in more closely related organisms? That means that they tend to share more characteristics. Okay, so what that means is the more closely related two organisms are, the more characteristics they share together. So now we're going to talk about prokaryotes versus eukaryotes. You guys had a reading about this earlier in the chapter. You just need to basically know the differences between these. So prokaryotes have no nucleus, whereas eukaryotes do have a nucleus. The prokaryotes have no membrane-bound organelles. Whereas the eukaryotes tend to have organelles, or they always do have organelles. That's one of the things that makes them a eukaryote. The prokaryotes tend to be simple, whereas the eukaryotes tend to be more complex. And the prokaryotes tend to be smaller, whereas the eukaryotes tend to be larger. Examples of prokaryotes, well, the basic example that you guys are probably most familiar with is bacteria. Whereas for eukaryotes, all the plants are eukaryotes, all the animals are eukaryotes, all the fungi are eukaryotes, and all the protists are eukaryotes. So because they are simpler and less complex, prokaryotes evolved first. Think of the pro and prokaryotes. Pro means before or first. Number three, had a couple people ask about this. Why are diagrams important in science? The reason why diagrams are important in science is the same reason why graphs are important, the same reason why writing is important. It is a simple way to communicate information. So a simple way to communicate information. That's it. Evolutionary trees are arranged to show, they are diagrams that show evolutionary relationships. They are backed, which means supported by evidence. So as we find new evidence, as with everything else in science, our understanding changes and our evolutionary trees change. We've been changing our evolutionary trees a lot since the discovery of DNA and being able to compare the DNA of organisms. Okay, right here we have a basic evolutionary tree. I'll draw that for you guys. Okay, remember you can draw them sideways, you can draw them left side, right side. It doesn't really matter. I'll draw one sideways here. Okay, so on these, the organisms at the top, or the organisms were the names, those are your taxa. Every single one of these are the taxa. Taxa, 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 taxa. So these things right here, those are your taxa. Okay, any place that comes off of a split, that's a branch, right? And so I can highlight all the branches in pink, right? There's a branch, there's a branch. This whole thing is a branch, right? So you can see all of those branches there. The next one is really important, and that's nodes. So where I'm drawing in orange, those are nodes, and those are where the species split, and they represent common ancestors. Okay. And that's it for the basic evolutionary tree with the branches, the nodes, and the common ancestor. So now you'll have to be able to read these evolutionary trees. So first of all, how many characteristics does this evolutionary tree show? Well, they're numbered for us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there's 6 of them. All right. Which taxa are more closely related to primates? Well, remember that the root, which is the base of the tree, is always the earliest. It's in the past, and the taxa are always in the present. So what we do is we look for primates. So here are primates right here. And we look at the most recent common ancestor. Oh, there's the node, there's the common ancestor. And we bring that to here. And it looks like the more recent common ancestor for us, for primates, is rodents and rabbits. Okay, I'm gonna erase the pink. Boop, boop, boop. All right, so now it asks which is more closely related, primates and crocodiles. So let's look at where the primates and crocodiles come together. Primates and crocodiles come together right there. And let's look at the primates and amphibians. Boom. So primates and amphibians. Here's the amphibians. Oh, here's where they meet. They meet right there. So the primates and amphibians meet there. So we look and we see that the more recent common ancestor is right there, the more pink one. And so the answer there is the primates and the crocodiles. Okay, which of the organisms can be considered the most simple? Well, that would have to be sharks, because based on this evolutionary tree, sharks only have vertebrae. Okay? Which taxa have amniotic eggs? So we look for amniotic eggs right here. So anything above that, primates, rodents, rabbits, crocodiles, and dinosaurs, those have amniotic eggs. So this one, this one, this one, and this one. So primates, rodents, crocodiles, and dinosaurs. Okay, which characteristic is most shared amongst the organisms? Well, we look down here at the base, and remember, everything above those lines, that trait has had by those organisms. So we look at our traits, and the earliest trait that evolved is the vertebrae, and so every single organism on this has vertebrae. So vertebrae. And we look here, and we look at past to present. We're bringing it up, right? Vertebrae also happened in the earliest. So it happened furthest in the past. All right, as we said earlier, the nodes between branches show the ancestors, or the common ancestors of those branches. Okay, and all the traits that a primate has, well, I'm just going to use the numbers. So primates are right here. Okay, and so we start at the root, and we bring our lineage all the way up from the root of the primates, and we just see which traits primates track with. They have a vertebrae, they have a bony skeleton, they have 4 limbs, they have an amniotic egg, and they have hair, but they do not have the 2 postorbital fenestrae. Okay, a population is a group of the same species in the same place, at the same time. All right, a species are, and so a population could be all the birds, or we have to be more specific. So all the cardinals in my tree, right? Same species, boom, cardinals, same place, boom, and same time is kind of implied based on that. Okay, define the species. The species is a group of similar organisms, meaning they look alike, they act alike, that can reproduce to make fertile offspring. And there are exceptions to this rule, but for the most part. Species is a group of similar organisms that can reproduce to make fertile offspring. So basically, all of a specific type of horse, all of a specific type of bug, all of a specific type of cow. It doesn't really matter, just that they can reproduce and make fertile offspring, and they look alike and they act alike, or within the degrees of variation. Speciation is when one species splits into two species. Okay, the steps of speciation are typically geographic isolation, followed by the two populations evolving independently, followed by reproductive isolation. Okay, geographic isolation then is when a population is kept separate by a geographic feature, like a lake or mountain or a river or a stream or an ocean. Okay, reproductive isolation is when a population no longer has offspring with another. And that can be because they don't like the way that the other population looks or behaves, or they might not be able to reproduce, like they physically are not able to reproduce, or if they are able to reproduce, the offspring itself becomes mute, or not mute, becomes sterile and can't have babies of its own. What role does natural selection have in speciation? Well, the two populations need to evolve separately due to different environments, so reproductive isolation can happen. Right? They have to become different enough that they are no longer attracted to each other, that they can no longer reproduce with each other, and so you need to have natural selection of two different environments, making those two populations become more and more different from each other. All right, definition, homologous structures. These are structures that come from a common ancestor. Okay, that they evolve differently. And the example was the skeletons and the bones in the arms. Okay, analogous structures are structures that look similar, but evolved from different structures. So they had a different ancestor. And so examples there are a fish fin and a dolphin fin or a whale fin, the butterfly wing and the bird wing. All right, vestigial structures. Vestigial structures are structures not needed or reduced that came from an ancestor And we talked about a ton of these. We talked about the appendix, the tailbone, the muscles for the hair. We talked about wisdom teeth. We talked about hips in a whale and snake. So we talked about a bunch of those. So embryology shows that similar embryo means species are more closely related. Okay, and so basically the longer that two embryos look the same, the more closely related they most likely are. All right, so next one is comparing DNA. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at these species and we're going to see who is the most and who is the least related to species 1. So species 1 is going to be our comparison. So we're going to start, we're just going to compare everything to species 1. So we're going to look at the differences between these organisms. And so in species 2, or 3 and 4, we're looking for differences. So 1 is an A, so T is different. This is an A, so T and G are different. This is a C, so all 3 are different. This is a T, so all 3 are different. This is a T, they're all the same. This is a T, that one's different. This is a G, that one's different. This is a G, they're all the same. And that is a G, those two are different. And now we just count up the differences. So species 2 has 1, 2, 3, 4 differences. Species 3 has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 differences. And species 4 has 3 differences. And as we talked about earlier, the more similar they are, the more closely related they are. So species 4 is the most related, and that means that species 3 is species 4 is the most related, and species 3 is the least related. Okay, next one. What we do is we look at these organisms here, and we look, these are my taxa. These are going to be my taxa, and these are going to be my traits. All right, and so what you do is you look and you see which ones are shared the most. Traits are easiest to put in first. So here we have chloroplast. All of them have chloroplasts, right? So chloroplast must come down here. Okay, and now we can start looking and seeing which organisms have which, because only the algae just has the chloroplasts, so that means the algae must go here. Okay, and now we look for the trait that is shared by 4 of them, because this trait down here is going to be shared by 4 of them. And so we look and we see that multicellular is shared by 4 of them, so that must be multicellular goes here. Okay, and we know where that one goes. Now we can see that which one is both chloroplast and multicellular. So we look for the one that is only chloroplast and multicellular, and so that one is the mosses, like a moss. All right, so we have moss done, we have multicellular done. Now the next most shared trait is the grows greater than 10 centimeters. Okay, so I check that one off, and I see one that is chloroplast, multicellular, and grows greater than 10 centimeters. And so I look for that one, and that one is the fern. Okay, I have one more trait. I look for the next most shared trait, because this trait here is shared by these 2 organisms. And so I look for the trait that is shared by 2 things, and that is seeds. Okay. And now that I know that the seeds are done, I can see that the one that has everything except for seeds is the flowering. Everything except for the last trait is going to be my flowering plant. Okay, and then last but not least, I have cones, and cones goes here, and that means that my last taxa must be my conifer. Okay, so that's how you do that. Last but not least on this page is the independent variable and the dependent variable. Independent variable, remember, capital I for independent. So independent variable goes on the x-axis, and the dependent variable, when I draw a capital D, it has one vertical line, so the dependent variable goes on the y-axis. Okay, so you're gonna have to read some curved line graphs like the following here. And so which month was the least amount of money made in 2009? So we have to look at the key. The red line is 2009. So we look for the least amount of money, which is right here. And so that means that it must be January. What month was the most amount of money made in 2008? 2008 is the blue line. And so we look at the most amount of money. That's the highest peak there. Highest peak is 400,000. We'll go down, and it was in May. And which year brought in more money during the month of September? So we go to September, and we see here that the blue line is above the orange line. So that means that the blue line, which is 2008, is the answer there. All right, so you're going to have to read the following SAT-style questions and answer these couple of questions based on it because you are going to have that same SAT reading question. Notice that there is a short answer, what is the main focus, and then related. Well, we should know what related is, but let's make sure, as used in paragraph 3. So we look, the biology says that the organisms and plants are related. So that must mean it must mean that they are connected in some way. All right, because you're talking about in the previous paragraph all the traits that they are sharing. And so right here, how are they related? And so related most likely means connected there. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll be back in class on Friday. Good luck studying. I will post this key to a Schoology so you can look at it and use it at your leisure. I'll see you on Friday. Go Pirates.